A proxy war is when powerful nations avoid direct conflict by supporting opposing sides in another country's war. Imagine two chess grandmasters never touching the board, but directing others to move the pieces, providing resources, strategy, and weapons. This indirect warfare lets major powers pursue their goals and test military technology, all while avoiding catastrophic confrontation at home. Proxy wars became central during the Cold War, as the US and Soviet Union, both armed with nuclear weapons, sought to avoid mutual destruction. Instead, they fought for influence in places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, never directly, but always present. Local combatants, national armies, rebels, guerrillas, became proxies, fighting for their own causes and those of distant patrons. The infusion of foreign money, weapons, and training escalated local disputes into global battlegrounds. The powerful nations provided the means. The locals paid the price in blood and devastation. Proxy wars are complex, morally ambiguous, and leave lasting scars on the nations where they're fought. The great powers may walk away, but the people left behind must live with the ruins. To understand modern conflict, we must understand the shadowy world of proxy wars. Powerful countries turn to proxy wars to avoid direct, potentially nuclear confrontation. For the US and Soviet Union, direct war risked global annihilation. Proxy wars offered a safer outlet for rivalry. They're also cheaper. Supporting local forces means fewer casualties and less political fallout at home. By arming and funding proxies, superpowers achieve their goals without sending their own troops into harm's way. Proxy wars offer plausible deniability. Covert support can be hidden, making accountability difficult. Intelligence agencies like the CIA and KGB operated in the shadows, fueling conflicts while denying involvement. These wars also served as testing grounds for new weapons and tactics. American and Soviet arms clashed in distant lands, providing valuable lessons without direct risk. Proxy wars became live-fire laboratories, shaping military strategy for decades. The cost was paid by others, but the benefits, strategic, technological, and political, flowed to the great powers. This logic still drives proxy conflicts today. The appeal is clear: maximum influence, minimal risk. The Cold War split the world into two camps, capitalist and communist, turning every regional conflict into a global contest. Decolonization created unstable new nations, ripe for internal strife and foreign intervention. The US and Soviet Union rushed to back factions aligned with their ideologies, transforming local disputes into proxy battlegrounds. Both sides believed in the righteousness of their cause. America feared the domino effect of communism, while the Soviets saw themselves as champions of revolution. Economic competition was fierce. The US rebuilt allies with aid. The Soviets did the same in their sphere. In the developing world, foreign aid and military support became tools to win allies and deny them to rivals. When influence wasn't enough, weapons and money flowed, setting the stage for proxy wars. The Cold War made the world a chessboard, with every move echoing far beyond its borders. Proxy wars became the era's defining feature. The Korean War was the first major Cold War proxy conflict, setting the pattern for decades to come. After World War II, Korea was split. Soviets in the north, Americans in the south, each backing rival regimes. In 1950, North Korea, armed by the Soviets, invaded the south, hoping for swift reunification. Stalin approved the plan, but kept Soviet troops out, letting Koreans do the fighting. The US responded, leading a UN force to defend South Korea, an American-led operation in all but name. The war escalated when China intervened, sending hundreds of thousands of troops to aid the North. The result? A multi-layered proxy war, with Soviets supplying weapons, China providing manpower, and the US leading the South. The conflict was devastating. Millions died, mostly Korean civilians. It ended in stalemate, the border unchanged. But the lesson was clear. Superpowers would fight to the last proxy to avoid direct war. Korea became a blueprint for future proxy conflicts. The cost was immense, the scars lasting. The world saw how local wars could become global flashpoints. Proxy warfare was here to stay. The Vietnam War was another defining proxy conflict, deeply scarring both Vietnam and the US. Vietnam, divided after French colonial rule, became a battleground for Cold War ideologies. The North, backed by the Soviets and China, sought reunification. The US propped up the South to stop communism's spread. American involvement escalated from advisors to hundreds of thousands of troops, but the war's proxy nature remained. Superpowers armed their allies, but never fought each other directly. Soviet and Chinese aid kept North Vietnam fighting, countering America's technological edge. The war was brutal, massive bombings, chemical defoliants, and immense civilian suffering. Despite overwhelming firepower, the US couldn't defeat the determined North Vietnamese and Viet Cong. The war divided America, eroded trust, and ended in a humiliating defeat. For the Soviets, it was a strategic win. America was bogged down, while they paid little direct cost. Vietnam proved the high price and tragic consequences of proxy warfare. The Soviet-Afghan War was the ultimate late Cold War proxy conflict. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1979 to prop up a faltering communist regime, expecting a quick victory. Instead, they faced fierce resistance from the Mujahideen, local fighters waging a holy war against foreign occupiers. The US saw an opportunity for payback after Vietnam, covertly arming and funding the Mujahideen to bleed the Soviets. The war became a quagmire. Soviets controlled cities by day, but the countryside belonged to the guerrillas. Brutal offensives and bombings failed to crush the resistance. The conflict drained Soviet resources, morale, and prestige, earning the nickname the Bear Trap. It was proxy warfare at its most ruthless, superpowers pulling strings, locals paying the price. US support for the Afghan Mujahideen was one of the CIA's largest covert operations, Operation Cyclone. To maintain deniability, aid was funneled through Pakistan's ISI, which favored hardline Islamist factions. Early on, the CIA supplied Soviet-made weapons to mask American involvement. As the war dragged on, the aid grew anti-tank missiles, mortars, and advanced communications. The turning point came with the Stinger missile. Suddenly, Mujahideen could shoot down Soviet helicopters, shifting the war's momentum. Billions of dollars flowed in from the US, Saudi Arabia, and the UK, devastating Soviet air power and morale. The covert campaign bled the Soviet Union, hastening its decline. The war cost thousands of Soviet lives and shattered the myth of Red Army invincibility. But the weapons and training given to the Mujahideen would have consequences far beyond the Cold War. The US achieved its goal, but at a price Afghanistan would pay for generations. Proxy warfare's success came with a dangerous legacy. The seeds of future chaos were sown. The proxy war in Afghanistan was a strategic win for the US, but a catastrophe for Afghans. Millions died or became refugees. The country was left in ruins, littered with landmines and destroyed infrastructure. After the Soviets withdrew, US interest faded, and the Mujahideen factions turned on each other. Civil war followed, even more destructive than the fight against the Soviets. Out of this chaos, the Taliban rose, promising order, but imposing harsh rule. Afghanistan became a haven for terrorists like Al-Qaeda, leading to 9/11s and another US intervention. The weapons and divisions left by the proxy war fueled decades of violence. Afghanistan's tragedy is a warning. Proxy wars may serve great powers, but devastate the nations caught in the middle. The scars of proxy conflict never truly heal. Proxy wars remain a brutal reality of international politics, born from great power rivalry. They allow powerful nations to fight by remote control, minimizing their own risks while maximizing the suffering of others. The Cold War perfected this model, but the logic endures. Today's conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and Ukraine follow the same pattern. Proxy wars prolong and intensify violence, leaving shattered societies and generational trauma. The weapons and divisions they create outlast the interests of their sponsors. Even when the great powers move on, the chaos remains. Understanding proxy wars is essential to understanding modern conflict. The technology may change, but the human cost is always high. For those on the ground, proxy wars are not strategy. They are survival. The legacy is clear. The world's chessboard is littered with broken lives,